Even metformin, the pharmaceutical medication prescribed for insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, lowers fasting insulin levels, but its side effects create problems for healthy people attempting long-term use. Now consider what thymoquinone, the dominant active substance inside black seed, actually accomplishes. Thymoquinone works through 3 parallel pathways that strike directly at the biological source of visceral fat buildup. First, laboratory studies and clinical research have measured it as one of the strongest natural insulin sensitizers ever identified. In 2019, a meta-analysis released in the journal Phytotherapy Research reviewed 12 randomized controlled trials focused on Nigella sativa supplementation and markers of insulin resistance. Across all 12 studies, black seed supplementation generated statistically meaningful drops in fasting insulin. Combined analysis revealed an average decrease close to 30%. As insulin resistance declines, visceral fat cells begin receiving a different hormonal command. The signal instructing them to preserve fat weakens. The body starts allowing visceral fat to be used as fuel. Second, thymoquinone strongly suppresses inflammatory cytokines, especially TNF-alpha, IL-6, and IL-1 beta. These are the same inflammatory compounds excessively released by visceral fat cells. They are also directly connected to insulin resistance. Thymoquinone lowers the inflammatory communication that creates and sustains visceral fat storage. The cycle is interrupted at the molecular level. Third, thymoquinone stimulates PP gamma receptors inside fat tissue. PPAR gamma functions as a nuclear receptor controlling fat cell metabolism. Once activated, fat cells shift away from storage behavior and toward mobilization behavior. Cells that previously retained stored contents begin releasing them for energy use. A randomized controlled trial published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology during 2020 enrolled overweight adults who received Nigella sativa oil supplementation for 12 weeks. Compared with placebo, the treatment group experienced significant reductions in waist circumference, body mass index, fasting glucose, and fasting insulin. The decreases in waist circumference stood out most clearly, reflecting the selective reduction of visceral abdominal fat associated with improved insulin sensitivity. The placebo group displayed no significant change in any measurement. $1 worth of black seed daily versus $100 each month for weight loss supplements that target none of these biological pathways. Now comes the connection the weight loss industry has spent 50 years preventing people from making. The worldwide weight loss market produces more than $200 billion every year. Diet pills, appetite suppressants, fat burners, meal replacements, metabolic supplements, and structured weight loss systems dominate that industry. All of them depend on one central idea. Weight reduction supposedly requires advanced high-cost proprietary solutions, rather than a $1 container of spice that existed in Middle Eastern grocery stores long before the Roman Empire. The business model of the weight loss market relies entirely on products that only function while consumers continue using them. An appetite suppressant losing effectiveness, once discontinued, creates recurring income. A fat burner needing constant use becomes a subscription model. A weight loss system addressing habits without correcting the hormonal source of visceral fat accumulation produces results that disappear once the program stops. Then the customer returns and purchases again. Black seed addresses insulin resistance itself. When insulin resistance is corrected, the condition does not automatically return after black seed use stops. The hormonal environment has already shifted. Visceral fat cells no longer receive the same accumulation signal. The biological process that made belly fat nearly impossible to lose has been targeted at its origin. That kind of result does not create repeat purchases. It represents a cure, while the weight loss industry sells management instead. Thymoquinone cannot receive a patent in its natural state. Nigella sativa has grown throughout the Mediterranean, the Middle East, and South Asia for millions of years. No pharmaceutical corporation can claim exclusive ownership over black seed oil. As a result, pharmaceutical companies have no financial motivation to fund the massive clinical trials required for regulatory approval of black seed as a metabolic therapy. Without those trials, black seed cannot place therapeutic claims on product labels. It must be marketed as food, as spice, as a dietary supplement using carefully limited wellness language. It cannot state what peer-reviewed studies confirm. It cannot claim a 30% reduction in fasting insulin. It cannot advertise targeting visceral belly fat through PP gamma activation. It cannot say it lowers inflammatory cytokines linked to insulin resistance. It can only describe itself as a traditional spice used for centuries in Middle Eastern cooking. Meanwhile, in the pharmacy aisle directly across the store, a $100 bottle of fat burner can promote nearly every metabolic promise its marketing department invents. Because regulatory approval was purchased to support those claims, this is how suppression functions, not censorship, not conspiracy. A regulatory and economic structure that amplifies patentable synthetic compounds while keeping natural, non-patentable remedies largely invisible. Yet the knowledge never vanished. It survived inside traditional medicine communities, integrative endocrinology clinics, and the expanding collection of peer-reviewed studies that transformed Nigella sativa into one of the most researched medicinal plants on Earth. Academic databases now contain more than 1,000 peer-reviewed studies involving Nigella sativa and thymoquinone. Research covers metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, visceral obesity, cardiovascular disease, inflammatory disorders, and cancer biology. The scale of research is extraordinary for a plant, receiving almost no attention in mainstream weight loss media. A systematic review published in the Journal of Diabetes and Metabolic Disorders during 2015 evaluated every available clinical trial, examining Nigella sativa and metabolic measurements. The review concluded that Nigella sativa supplementation repeatedly produced statistically significant improvements in fasting blood glucose, insulin resistance, body weight, and waist circumference across the analyzed studies. The authors observed that the measured effects matched or exceeded outcomes associated with certain pharmaceutical metabolic drugs. An integrative endocrinologist based in Texas started adding Nigella sativa oil into treatment protocols for patients suffering from insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome in 2014. Across a 4-year follow-up period, she documented outcomes. Patients who consistently used Nigella sativa oil for 90 days demonstrated measurable improvement in HOMA-IR scores, the standard clinical marker used to evaluate insulin resistance. The improvements matched results typically produced by low-dose metformin. But there were no gastrointestinal side effects, no prescription requirement, no monthly pharmacy expense, only a $1 jar of spice consumed once each day. The endocrinologist published those observations in an integrative medicine journal. Academic response remained limited. No major weight loss company financed additional research because expanded trials would confirm that a $1 spice performs better than $100 products at correcting the true biological source of belly fat. Here is the exact protocol. Step 1 begins with purchasing cold-pressed Nigella sativa oil, also known as black seed oil or black cumin oil. Cold-pressed preparation matters because thymoquinone breaks down under heat. Heat-extracted black seed oil contains far lower concentrations of thymoquinone compared with cold-pressed oil. A 250 milliliter bottle of cold-pressed Nigella sativa oil generally costs between $8 and $15 through Middle Eastern grocery stores, health food retailers, or online suppliers. Using 1 teaspoon daily, that bottle lasts about 50 days. Daily cost comes to roughly 15 to 20 cents. Another option is purchasing whole black seeds and eating them directly. Whole seeds cost even less. A 100-gram package usually ranges between $1 and $3 and provides enough for months of everyday use. The oil delivers more stable thymoquinone dosing. The whole seed version costs less and also includes fiber, along with other useful compounds absent from the oil. Both options work. Step 2 is taking 1 teaspoon of black seed oil each day. Clinical studies producing the 30% drop in fasting insulin use doses ranging from 1 to 3 grams of Nigella sativa oil daily. 1 teaspoon equals roughly 5 milliliters, or about 4 grams. That amount falls directly inside the therapeutic range used during clinical research. Step 3 is consuming it on an empty stomach during the morning. Thymoquinone absorption increases during a fasted state. Morning intake also places the insulin sensitizing effect during the post-meal period when insulin demand is usually highest. If the flavor feels too intense on an empty stomach, combine it with a small quantity of raw honey. Honey does not significantly interfere with absorption. The combination of black seed and honey is also among the oldest therapeutic formulas in Islamic medicine. Step 4 is consistency for no less than 90 days. Correcting insulin resistance and producing visceral fat reduction is cumulative. It does not occur within 2 weeks. Clinical trials showing major reductions in waist circumference and fasting insulin lasted from 12 to 16 weeks. Do not judge the results after only 1 month. Allow the full 90 days required by the research. Step 5 is reducing refined carbohydrate intake. Black seed improves insulin resistance, but consuming large quantities of refined carbohydrates that repeatedly spike insulin throughout the day works against that correction. A strict ketogenic diet is unnecessary. Simply lowering intake of refined sugar and processed carbohydrates allows the insulin sensitizing properties of thymoquinone to create faster visible changes. Weeks 1 through 4. Fasting insulin levels begin falling. The change may not yet be visible, but blood work can measure it. Markers of chronic inflammation also begin decreasing. Energy levels may improve as insulin signaling normalizes. Weeks 4 through 8. Waist measurements begin shrinking. Visceral fat previously preserved by insulin resistance starts being mobilized for fuel. The belly that resisted every diet and every exercise routine finally begins responding. Weeks 8 through 16. Waist circumference reductions become visible and substantial. At this stage, clinical trial participants demonstrated statistically significant improvement across all metabolic markers. The biological process that made belly fat nearly impossible to lose has now been corrected. Total cost for a 16-week metabolic correction protocol comes to approximately $40 to $60 for 4 bottles of cold pressed black seed oil. Compare that with 4 months inside a weight loss program charging $100 monthly. $400 for a system focused on behavior instead of the hormonal source versus $50 for a spice correcting the insulin resistance that caused the behavioral approach to fail. Every civilization that understood human metabolism independently arrived at the same plant. Egyptian physicians who placed it inside a pharaoh's tomb understood it. Islamic physicians who created centuries of medical literature around it understood it. Ayurvedic practitioners who included it in metabolic therapies understood it. They all reached the same conclusion because the answer already existed inside the biochemistry of thymoquinone and its interaction with insulin receptors and inflammatory pathways found in every human body. Insulin resistance has no brand name. PP gamma receptors carry no patent number. Thymoquinone requires no prescription. For 3,000 years, belly fat has been treatable at its biological source with a substance costing $1. The biochemistry never changed. What changed was the industry built around convincing people that access to that biochemistry requires something worth $200 billion each year. Every appetite suppressant, every fat burner, every metabolic booster, every weight loss system, all built around treating symptoms while ignoring the hormonal mechanism driving visceral fat accumulation. Because fixing the mechanism permanently ends the revenue stream. That is not conspiracy. That is arithmetic. If this information changed the way you view stubborn belly fat and the $1 jar of black seed sitting in a nearby spice aisle, share this story with someone else searching for answers. More people deserve access to knowledge that existed long before modern marketing decided who could see it. Please leave your thoughts about this content in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.